Pietermaritzburg, 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Ahlan wa sahlan wa marhaba bikum. My name is Yunus Sacoor, and I will be in your company for the next 2 hours. I will be interviewing our guest shortly. Today, the date is the 13th of Rabiul Akhir, 1446 AH, equivalent to the English date of 16th October 2024. On tonight's show, we're going to continue somewhat with last week's discussion, but a little bit more in-depth. We're going to talk about the 100 days of GNU versus service delivery. Now, the reason why I'm doing that comparison is because the markets has responded to the effectiveness of the GNU, but is service delivery improving? That's what we're going to discuss today. And then the second part of our discussion is around activism and identity. If listeners recall, we were chatting about the role of ratepayers, the role of civic organizations, the role of NGOs, and how do we identify and what impact these NGOs will have going forward. There are schools of thought that indicate that NGOs are raising issues, but council is not responding, government is not responding. In the past, that was the case, but in present, what impact it's having. And we know some ratepayer associations are moaning and groaning, like ERPM. They're saying we met several times with the mayor, we met several times with the leadership, and all they do is listen, and there's no changes in service delivery. In fact, it's getting worse. So my guest on tonight's show is Willie Aucamp. He's the DA Member of Parliament and the spokesperson. We'll be chatting to him shortly on the 100 days of GNU and what impact it's had on service delivery. He's right in Parliament and he can chat on the issue. We have with us Councilor Ernest Smith, who was last week in the show with us. He's a councillor in Ward 27, a very verbose councillor, an active councillor. He's in one of the difficult areas of Musgrave and Morningside and those areas, and there's lots of issues his constituents are raising constantly. We have the caucus leader, EXCO member of a Tekwini municipality, Councilor Thabani Mthethwa. Thabani spoke to us briefly last week, but we're going to raise some very tricky questions with him today. So he will give us the answers. He's also verbose. And then we also have with us in the studio, Dr. Rama Naidu. He's from 6 Degree Shift. He spoke to us about the role of civic organizations, etc. So he's going to briefly chat about what is activism all about and how do we identify with activism. We also have the chair of ORA and the chairman of UFP, United for Palestine. He's been very busy these last couple of weeks. Abdool Valodia from the Overpert Ratepayers Association. So before I interview our guests live in the studio, they're all present with me. They're keen to listen to Willie Aucamp, who is all the way in Cape Town. I'm not sure whether he's in one of the areas in retreat. I thought I received a call, but let me just welcome him. Good evening, Willie, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al-Ansar International in the beautiful city of Durban.
Good evening, Yunus. It's nice to speak to you from the beautiful city of Cape Town. So, yeah, we've got a beautiful country, eh?
Oh, yes, most certainly. And we have to save the country, protect the country, rescue the country, whatever terms you call it, because we got a lot to live for in this country, and everybody else must look forward to joining us.
Absolutely. We've got this beautiful place with beautiful people. And if you look at the people of South Africa, we've got so much in common, way more in common than what drives us apart. And I think that we are seeing that with this GNU.
Yes, and I'm glad that the DA has finally decided and agreed that this is how the government should run. But I'm just going to quote, your KZN DA leader, who clarified, there were some concerns about the GNU instability. He says we will ensure things stay on track. And he was mentioning the collapse of the working relationship between the ANC and DA in Gauteng has put the GNU on unstable ground. But he says they can handle that part. DA leader Francois has also assured province that the developments in Gauteng would not affect them. Briefly, when he spoke to news media, he said that the coalition was in the hands of the DA and IFP, and they were working quite well. And he further said that as the GNU celebrates 100 days of governance, there have been a few noted hiccups along the way. One of the major and most recent ones was the situation in Swane, where Silius Brink, the mayor, was removed and another mayor was brought in. This unexpected move has left investors and citizens in confusion about the future and stability of the GNU. So Francois Rogers clarified that the instability of the GNU would not affect the government structure in KwaZulu-Natal. Now, ANC leader Fikile Mbalula also issues a warning to Panyaza Lesufi because he's the premier in Gauteng, and he's been making some remarks which is cause for concern. So he warned that, listen, this problem of anti-government in national unity will not prevail because everybody is committed to make this arrangement work. Now, what I'd like to hear from you, Willie, briefly is we're 100 days into the GNU, and perhaps you just want to give us a progress report, because what we're hearing and of cause for concern is, has there been an improvement in service delivery? Because the markets have responded positively. So in that 100 days, what have you observed being in Parliament that has given a positive indication of the GNU, Willie?
Yunus, thank you very much for the opportunity to speak to Al-Ansar and its listeners. Before we get to that, I think it's very important that we look at what the alternative to this government of national unity was. The alternative to the GNU as we see it now was a government where the ANC, EFF and MK would have governed South Africa. And I think we all know exactly what a catastrophe that would have been. So the Democratic Alliance a little bit more than 100 days ago realized that we've got to adhere to what we promised the people of South Africa, and that is that we will save South Africa and we will rescue South Africa. That is what we said during the elections. And immediately after the election results came out, everybody saw that this is a new dispensation for South Africa, and we had to start to work together. Now, when the negotiations took place, and that comes back to your question now, it was said that this is for a government of national unity. We knew that the time frame that we had, which was 2 weeks to iron out all the stuff, was just not enough to agree with each other on every single province and on every metro and every municipality in the country. It would not have happened. So it was agreed that this is a government of national unity and that we will take each province and each metro as it comes. So with regards to the KwaZulu-Natal coalition government that is there, or let's say a government of provincial unity that is safe, I think we've got a very good partner in the IFP there, and we hope that the problems that we experienced in Gauteng will not repeat itself. I think we've got to also go and look at what you said now about Mr. Fikile Mbalula and the problems that the ANC internally has got with somebody like Panyaza Lesufi, who is the Premier of Gauteng, where we saw in KZN that there was a willingness of parties to work together, same as on the national government side. We saw that in Gauteng there was a definite unwillingness from Mr. Panyaza Lesufi to work with the DA in that province. The ANC in Gauteng has got 36% of the votes. The DA has got 28%. So there's only a 8% difference between us. But all the efforts that we put in to creating a government of provincial unity in Gauteng were rubbed off by Mr. Panyaza Lesufi, and we could see that with their actions in Tshwane, getting rid of a very excellent mayor in the form of Mayor Silje Brink. But the ANC has got its internal struggles, and they need to sort that out. So with regards to the government of national unity, we can just say that if you look back, you said it yourself, the investment confidence that the markets are happy about this. Everybody can see that South Africa as a nation is on a better track. And that is what we've got to build on, is to really take this positive, confident image that we've created with this GNU and build on that, so that we, from the DA side, as we said in the beginning, so that we firstly can grow the economy and secondly reduce the unemployment rate. That must be the main ideals that we've got in this government of national unity. And I think that we are on track of achieving that, irrespective of the problems that might arise in other parts of the country with regards to provinces and metros.
No, I think well presented, Willie. What I want to mention is President Ramaphosa recently chatted about the 100 days, and he said that this was the request of the voters, that the parties must get together and form a government that will lead South Africa effectively, improve service delivery. So that's exactly what you've indicated you'll achieve in the 100 days. But I want to go back to the Gauteng scenario and compare it with the KwaZulu-Natal. Now, you mentioned that the ANC had 36%, DA 28%, and if those two combined, you would have definitely, as a provincial of national unity, led the province. But unfortunately, that didn't work out in Gauteng, and this is why there are some problems. But if you look at KZN, because the DA, ANC only got about 19% to 80%, 18% in KZN, the DA got slightly more. IFP came in together with NFP and controlling KwaZulu-Natal. It was a more difficult setup, but the will of those that wanted change enabled the provincial of national unity to control KZN, whereas Gauteng, as you rightly said, the ANC need to get its house in order, because that should have been an easier provincial of national unity than KZN.
It should have been. But again, you've got to work with people that you can trust. And I think that is what we've got in KZN and not in Gauteng. It is very clear that there are two ANCs at this moment. You've got the ANC of Ramaphosa, and then you've got the ANC of Lesofie and Mashatile. And they need to get their house in order. And I think it's high time that President Ramaphosa realized that he's got partners within this GNU that, together with his section of the ANC, can form a majority in this country, and that he can stand up to the RET factions within the ANC. The alternative in KZN was to have MK involved. And as I said in my opening statement here, is that would have been catastrophic. So sometimes maybe out of necessity, we were put in a place where we had to learn that we've got to work with each other, that we've got to trust each other, that we've got to act in a collegial way with each other. And that is present in KZN, and that is present on a national level. But that is unfortunately not present in the Gauteng provincial legislature and Gauteng province. And I think it is directly due to Mr. Panyaza Lesofie and his actions there. He made it clear from the beginning that he would rather not work with the DA. And I think the fact that Mr. Fikile Mbalula asked Mr. Lesofie to go in and account for some of his statements makes it clear that there are turbulence within the ANC, but they've got to sort out the internal issues. We've got the responsibility to take this country, and you guys in KZN, that province, to take that forward. And that is a huge responsibility, and I think we are really executing that to the best of our abilities, and it's really showing results at this moment.
Just one more question, Willie. I know I've told you for 20 minutes I'll interview you, but you
No, it doesn't matter.
I have no problem. Stay on, because I got some of your colleagues discussing their eThekwini issues here. But, I purposely selected 100 days of GNU versus service delivery. Now, our economist that comes into the studio regularly indicated that the financial and the economic indicators has improved quite remarkably since the GNU, particularly the value of the rand and other commodities in South Africa, because people are confident. But there is a little bit of concern in respect of the physical service delivery at a national, provincial and local government level, where a lot of the voters are saying that, okay, you're 100 days in GNU, but have we seen improvement in water supply, reticulation repairs, and other? I know it becomes more a local government issue, but a lot of these things are at national level. For example, NERSA is proposing a 40-odd% increase in electricity, etc. And this is becoming unaffordable. So from your perspective in national government, in terms of service delivery, what are the noticeable improvements in service delivery post the 100 days of GNU?
Yunus, I think the first thing that the people out there must realize, that if you compare 100 days of the GNU with 30 years of ANC government, this first 100 days is a very small drop in the ocean. And if you look at what happened in this 30 days compared to the 30 years, in this 100 days compared to the 30 years, it is true that we are really making improvements. If you go to a Home Affairs office now, the queue that you will stand in will be shorter, because Minister Leon Schreiber acted in a direct way to really shorten the queues there by reducing the visa backlog, by reducing the ID document backlog. There's systems being put in place. If you look at, let's take for instance, Mr. Solly Malatsi, who is the Minister for Digital Technologies. A lot of places, especially in KZN. You've got rural places in the Northern Cape where I come from, where people just does not have any data service. They can't go onto the internet like you and me. They don't have that service because for many years they were not allowed to have Starlink come in and provide that service. Minister Solly Malatsi came in and he is busy implementing that. And hopefully, in a very short time from now, people in the far flung corners of KZN will have internet access. Can you imagine what that will do to schooling? If you can have children in the far flung areas of the Northern Cape and KZN being able to have online classes, that will improve a lot. If you look what Minister Dean McPherson, who is from your province, as the Minister of Public Works is doing, is turning South Africa into a construction site. That will obviously create stability in the country. It's improving the infrastructure, it's creating jobs, and it's attracting investments. So all of these stuffs are being done in a way to benefit South Africans. If you look at John Steenhuisen, who is our leader, also from your province, he is the Minister of Agriculture. In the past, when there was a foot and mouth disease outbreak, no other country imported red meat from South Africa. He went to China, he had discussions with his Chinese counterparts, and they've agreed that if we can show that, let's say, for example, like right now, there's a foot and mouth disease outbreak in the Eastern Cape, if we can control it there and confine it there and show them the proof thereof, they'll still import meat from the other sectors or other parts of our country. That is huge, huge improvements that we are making. And so we see ministers of other parties also coming to literally to the party and doing their jobs. And we hope that the positive energy that the DA within the GNU has brought to that table will rub off onto the other ministers, and that we will really see people that are there, not for their own pockets, but to work hard to better the lives of every South African and to deliver services. And we could see that. We saw that with the inflation rate going down, interest rates going down, the fuel price went down, markets are up, foreign investment confidence in South Africa is there. We've got to grow the economy, Yunus. If we can grow the economy, we will create jobs. If we create jobs, the crime rate goes down. People can pay for their children to go to school. That is what we've got to do with South Africa. We've got to turn this around, and everybody must be really putting everything in their power to be able to enable us to do that. And from a government side and a party side, the Democratic Alliance, we are into this GNU boots and all. We really want to make this work. And I think we have proven in the past that where we govern good, and we will now implement that in those structures within this GNU and within the province that you are from.
So what you're alluding to, Willie, is that the DA has added value to GNU, and you are attributing this to the GNU, that the GNU has delivered, which the president has indicated. Now, what I just I want to bring in my other colleagues, and you can stay on the line. Has the GNU acknowledged all these positive steps that have been taken that you are talking about? Because I want to touch briefly on local government, and I'd like you to stay on the line while some of the councillors from eThekwini start chatting. But has the GNU acknowledged all these positive changes that have taken place at parliamentary level?
Well, we can see that these changes are there, but we also know that we've got a very long road to travel. There will be differences within this GNU. We knew from day one that we will not agree on everything, and that we've got to work with each other. But I think that the people on ground level in the provinces and in the different metros and rural municipalities of our country will see in time the changes that are being made. If you can go to a SASSA office and claim your grant, and you know that you've got security of that because you are part of an economy that's growing, a tax income that can definitely pay that grant to you, and not compare and compare it to what you had a year ago where there were uncertainty about that. I think people on ground level will feel and see that. Again, Yunus, if you've got to compare this 100 days with 30 years of governance that was done poorly, of corruption that thrived, we are here now to turn things around, and it is not too late. We will rescue South Africa. It's a huge effort, but we will do that. And I think that people on ground level will gradually see that there are huge changes being put in place.
that, Willie, it's becoming a team effort, because I know the Minister of Safety and Security has made some fundamental changes to improve crime in and around KwaZulu-Natal and other areas, as well as the other ministers are brushing off those ministers that are achieving, good results. But I want to sort of, discuss my favorite subject, which is local government, and that's where it's delivery on the ground. And with me in the studio, I have Councilor Ernest Smith. He's the councillor in eThekwini municipality for Ward 27. If you can stay on the line, Willie, I'll just invite them to chat a little bit. And if you need to come in, don't be afraid to come in and hold these councillors to account. Councillor Ernest Smith, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Wa alaikum salam. Thank you for that, Yunus.
And Councillor Ernest is from Ward 27. We've also got Councillor Thabani Mthethwa. He's the caucus leader for the Democratic Alliance and is an EXCO member in the eThekwini municipality. Councillor Thabani, good evening and welcome to News in Focus.
Good evening to you, Yunus, and your listeners, and thanks for having us.
It's a pleasure. I've also got Dr. Rama Naidu. He's, part of 6 Degree Shift, a civic activist, and also, involved with civic organizations. Dr. Rama, good evening and welcome to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International.
Good evening. It's great to be with you.
It's a pleasure having you. And we've got Abdool Valodia. He's the chair of Overpert Ratepayers Association. He's done some wonderful work, supported the initiatives of service delivery in KZN, also civic activism. He's also the chair of United for Palestine. Abdool, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to News in Focus.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullah, and thank you for having us on the show, and good evening to listeners also online.
Thabani, I want to bring you in first. Now, eThekwini has been fraught with problems of service delivery, which we've discussed for a number of shows, including last week. And we know that the elections are coming up in 2026. And there's been serious concerns in eThekwini for various types of services, leaving out water and electricity, which are key issues. And we know we are into this water constraint program, and Ernest discussed it briefly last week. I know that there seems to be a disjoint between the KZN provincial of national unity and eThekwini municipality. So, in other words, you have the Premier, who is Tamin Tuli, and Minister of Kokta from the IFP making recommendations to the eThekwini municipality, and then the mayor has another view, and then there's a ministerial task team. Perhaps you want to give us an update, and then the Section 154, that how all these interventions are working to improve service delivery in eThekwini.
Look, we are on record as a DA over a couple of years now, having said that we don't believe that eThekwini can self-correct. We have been calling for provincial and national intervention in eThekwini because we could realize and appreciate the fact that with the level of collapse and instability, there was no way that eThekwini was going to self-correct. We therefore welcomed, firstly, I think around April, the intervention by the presidential working group that was introduced in eThekwini. We welcomed that with warm hands. And also at the beginning of July, the Section 154 team that was introduced by the MEC of Kokta, that too we welcomed as a positive.
That was initially introduced by the president as well, before the implementation.
Of course, if you look at the history of 154, it was supposed to be introduced last year, but because of the internal ANC infightings, that was rejected.
Correct.
And of course, the intervention by the president is also part of Section 154.
Correct.
We therefore appreciate and welcome with warm hands as the DA in eThekwini all this intervention. Our only concern is that there doesn't seem to be a well-coordinated working arrangement between the team introduced by the province through the MEC of Kokta and that introduced by the president. All we want to see, because we don't care about the politics as the DA, all we are obsessed about is that people must receive the services that they pay for. So we want to see them working together, because at the end of the day, we don't really care as to who introduces who. All we want to see is systems being put in place, making sure that eThekwini does go back to the glory days where service delivery was not an issue.
Now, Ernest, I want to bring you in. I know that you in the portfolio committee of trading services, And that's an area where service delivery is challenging, and a lot of concerns have been raised. And last week you alluded to the fact that with all these disputes amongst the officials, people are getting suspended, like you mentioned last week, that the Deputy City Manager of Trading Services has been suspended and for controversial reasons. And now you've got an acting Deputy City Manager, and you're not sure whether he's capable of delivering services in this important portfolio. And what Councilor Thabani is mentioning, that all these interventions have to work in sync to make sure that the municipality starts improving service delivery. Otherwise, the infighting is just going to pull everything apart. And poor old Willie Aucamp from the GNU at National, President is making some serious statements about KZN, but they're not seeing the improvements.
Yeah.
Perhaps you want to comment, Ernest?
Yeah, Jazakallah. Assalamu alaikum to the listeners. Thanks for having us on again.
It's a pleasure.
I really enjoyed the last time we addressed this because we really started getting to the nitty-gritty of it. We welcome the interventions because, and as Thabani so rightly pointed out, we have problems. We have problems right from the lower tiers right up to the top. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it, but we do have pseudo-politicians playing. Officials who are playing pseudo-political role here. Instead of being resident-orientated, they were making sure that the departments implement services which are for all of us. There is political interference. I'm not going to play with that, but the reality of it is these interventions have become beyond necessary, because this infighting we're referring to, this cadre deployment issues that have come, and as Willie so rightly pointed out, the ANC is splitting in half. You have the ANC who wants to actually start making things work and join us and getting things done, as it were. But then you have people who are selfish, and they don't have the best interests of the people at heart. And I think that's where the problems are. And that's why people out there also need to be mindful of the situation, because at the end of the day, you have so many acting positions. You have so many individuals who, and I'll use PRC as an example. The head is also suspended. PRC is what is essentially, so I'll simplify it for everybody, is what the trees, what we see. Electricity head also suspended. All right, that's one of the key life services to our city that ensures that our factories are running, our businesses are operational, that that we can still bake and cook and clean. And I think to tie in before, I don't want to take up another 15-20 minutes of it again, but in essence, nothing is being done to rectify this. There's nothing being done to say, guys, let's prioritize the people, regardless of political affiliation. But instead, we're taking the opposite approach and weaponizing these issues, and that's where these issues come in. And this is where the GNU becomes has to work. We haven't got an option anymore. But also, when you have politics at such a local level, which differs substantially from what the province is doing or what the national government is doing, that's when we have been calling and saying, guys, you cannot self-correct. You are compromised to the point where a simple thing of I've employed you to do a job, but because you're a comrade of mine, I can't do the job, or I can't crack the whip on you because you're going to report me through my political structures, and then there's going to be an internal fight. And I think that's where some of these issues are coming from. And the self-correction is what we've been calling for. Basic things like today. A pump goes down, there's no notice about it. The residents are left without water. It's a simple issue that becomes a major problem, and it boils down to people in this municipality not being able to self-correct.
Rama, I want to bring you in. Activism normally results in improvement in whatever you want to do. When you were an activist, the issue was to fight apartheid and to bring changes with other activists involved, and some of them are late, others are still around, and they identified themselves for change, for a just government, for an administration that's clean. And now, from your perspective, I know a lot of ratepayer associations are complaining that they're raising issues and nothing is being done. Perhaps I just want you to comment what went wrong between activism and the current state of service delivery.
Thank you, Yunus. I think the biggest thing is that civil society went to sleep. We thought the battle was over. We had liberation. And now we trusted the people that liberated us to rule us in a way that was just, that fulfill all the promises they made when they came in. And we left that too long.
We trusted them too long.
As a result, politicians began to play their own game as if people were not a part of it. Their infighting, their politics, their gerryman, everything that they did, civil society's voice was in a quandary because this was the liberation movement. How do you, as a comrade, start to turn to say, now we don't trust this government? It took 30 years for that shift to happen, for people to begin to say enough in that space. And it's completely understandable. This is the history of civil society movements all over the world. So it's not unique to South Africa. It takes about 20, 25 years before people realize that this thing is over. And now we see a stirring again of this. And I think the GNU, more than what Willie was speaking about it as something bringing us together, still needs the people of this country to change the way we speak about it. Because I tell you, when talk of the GNU was happening, in the circles I were in, people were still saying, this will never work. This will never work. I said, well, what if we changed the way we saw it and said, what's the alternative to this? And that the people had in fact spoken. This last vote was a clear action of people's voices in action. And I think right now the next test for us is the upcoming local government election, because that's where the tire hits the road. And we see whether we can still get back into that state where in local politics, people are having a go at each other. It's not about service delivery, it's about personalities, it's about race, and all the things that we know about. I'm really hoping that this time, this election is run differently, based on real needs, and that people start getting more involved actively in what's happening in politics. As I listen to our speakers who speak about all these things, I ask the question, how many people are aware of what's happening in the city of Durban? That there have been so many suspensions. And I think one of the things is if you want a government of national unity, you want it to work, and Willie said it, the basis is trust. That trust has been broken. The social compact has been broken. And you can't mend a social compact. You need to redesign a new one that we can all align to. And I must tell you one last little bit. Recently at a workshop with the community, talking about building this country and politics, we ended up, I said, listen, let's sing the national anthem. Because the national anthem is a tribute to this country, not to politicians, it's to this country. And I was amazed that so many people in that group, black, white, and brown, did not even know the words of the national anthem. They did not even know how to stand when singing the national anthem. I said, my goodness, if this is how we feel about our country, if we can't even acknowledge that and feel that pride, then what do we need to do to reinstill that notion, this is our land, this is our country, this is our home? And if we don't fight for it actively, somebody will take it away from us again.
Some very pertinent comments, Rama. I want to bring you in, Abdool. Abdool, you recently, just over a year ago, became part of ORA. You formed and you're the chair, and you've seen improvements. Maybe you've done something different from the other ratepayer associations. Can you explain to us what you've noticed? What action did your ratepayer association take to get service delivery improved in Ward 31?
Sure, Yunus, thanks. So basically, when it came to service delivery in our areas, we always rely on our councillors to do whatever we have to do. So we decided as a forum to form a ratepayers association, which the ORA was formed. And it's been going on almost 2 years now that we're in existence. And when we said, let's try and work with the structure, the ratepayers association is always out there to work with the councillors, right? That's what we do. We're all about governance, to hold the government accountable, to hold the municipality accountable. That's what ratepayers' duty is all about. So we can have the checks and balances in order. It's not something there just for name and fame to be sitting out there to say, you're the chair or you're so and so. So it's all about holding accountability. It's for governance for the people. And that's what we look at. So, but from the time that we started off, the ORA has made major improvement within our ward. And you know what? I would say also, our councillor did win AWOL. I think, we mentioned this quite a few times. We had our councillor that decided that doesn't want to work with us. And the councillor did go AWOL, yes, but now we have some relationships that's going on, which is very good. Councillor's back with us. She does a lot of work with us. I'm also part of the war room, which I'm the deputy chair as well in the war room. So we do have heated arguments, heated discussions, but we're very cordial. This has nothing to do with politics from the way we see. It's
Abdool,
all about...
what did you all do to really improve service delivery? In other words, did you all work closely with sort of the councillors, with the officials of the department, to ensure that there's an adequate or a quick response to service delivery issues?
Well, I think just before the election, we could see, there was an issue with regards to service deliveries in our ward, and a lot of things were not being worked. A lot of the jobs were not being recognized. Service delivery was at its worst due to the factions that was going on between the DA and the ANC in the municipality, and we were being, in the crossfire. So we decided as the ORA, let's go directly to the municipality. And that's what we did. We started engaging with the mayor, which we brought in here to Al Ansar Radio, Yunus, if you remember.
Yes, correctly.
And we had a very long, discussion. That also opened up doors for us to go through people directly. So whenever we had an issue, we went direct to the person for water and sanitation, and they assisted us with priorities. Now there was no infections anymore to say that's a DA issue, it's an ANC issue. Now it became a service delivery issue, and that's how we started winning. We have burst pipes, we knew who to go to. Anything to do with service delivery, we knew the departments who we could handle, who we could make the phone calls, to. And it did happen. One thing I actually want to bring out, Thabani, that's on your side. If we look at it, in the early days, which the GNU now has come back, elections came back almost 5 months now. And, the one very amazing thing that took place is that once government had this GNU, all of a sudden in KZN, service delivery went very high up. The bins were being cleaned outside, towns were getting clean. In fact, I've never seen Durban CBD being so beautiful, like, how it was done. But what happened there? That's something that we need to understand, because if they could do it then, and even on the freeway while I was driving on the way to Mshlanga, I could see they were cleaning up the bushes there, getting things clean and, neat and tidy. So we said, guys, this GNU thing is actually working, Yunus.
Yes.
But now it's gone back to the same status quo. So, from your side, being the whip, I think... Caucus leader. Sorry, apologies, right? I think, what? Something major has to happen, because they've showed that they could do it. Why is it that we've gone backwards again? Is this the internal faction or the internal politics is playing and is basically creating problems for us, with regards to service delivery? And this is something that what we look at. In fact, if I look at municipalities, I think it should be apolitical. It shouldn't be involved with political, organizations. That's why whenever I see you, Ernest, I always see you with your Chikwini badge. I don't see you as a DA member. I recognize you as that. And that's how it should be. Because end of the day, people want service delivery. We don't care about the political, issues. Your vote, you must go out there and get the votes done. But the votes will be done based on services. And right now we know it can be achieved, it can be done. But we need to find a way again how we're going to reinstall this, because the KZN is in a mess. Let's be honest. Now we got a new mayor came. For example, now we got the president that, brought this...
task team.
The task team. But the guys that sitting on the task team, who are they?
Listen,
what
Abdool,
do they...
Abdool, we're gonna chat on that after the news break.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
I just want to
round up one more thing.
Yeah. Okay. Quickly.
Right. Regarding the task team, all I say from the task team itself, the government should have worked. The president should have came out to organizations like us, ratepayers. There's plenty of associations. We know the problems that we are faced with. You're sitting with a task team that can't address things or what's going on the ground. So I don't understand how that's going to work. Thanks.
Okay, Willie, are you still on the line?
I am on the line.
Okay, some interesting
I'm really
discussions.
enjoying this conversation.
Yes. Willie, what we're going to do is we're going to ask you to hang up, because we're going to have a news break, and we'll connect with you immediately after the news break in about 5 to 7 minutes time, because I want your comments, and I'm going to ask you to prepare yourself, is that the president has raised concerns about local government, particularly at eThekwini. He's formed this task team because he believes that the GNU must have local governments working because the government of national government has neglected local government. So I want your input and comments. But we'll take a break for the news. You hang up and we'll get back to you in about 5 to 7 minutes' time.
Sure. I look forward to that. Thank you.
Children attend school each day without having eaten breakfast. This seriously affects their ability to concentrate and understand lessons. The Al-Imdad Foundation's Make Breakfast Possible campaign allows learners to enjoy a high-energy cereal at the start of the school day. Help children to focus on learning and not hunger. Let's make breakfast possible today. Donate online at alimdad.com or call 0861 786 243 for more information.
Explore the world with Worldview Travel. Let our expert team guide you in creating a travel experience that exceeds your expectations. Unbeatable flight deals, corporate and leisure bookings, luxurious accommodations, tailor-made packages, reliable car rentals, comprehensive travel insurance, seamless visa assistance. Visit us at 55 Problem Keys Road, Durban. Call 031 001 7062 or 0718350216. Follow us on Instagram at Worldview Trav. Your journey starts here. Worldview Travel.
Spring into spring with these great deals from Bawa Superstore. Get these kitchen appliances at unbelievable prices. From our audio and visual department, we have massive savings on Toshiba 55-inch smart TV at 5,999 and the 75-inch smart TV at 10,999. Get the Boston 6-seater 7-piece dining room set at 7,499. We have a massive markdown on our beds and mattresses from Thele, Restauronic, Cloud9, and Rest Assured. We promise we're the cheapest. If not, we will meet or match any price of any reputable dealer in town. Only at Bawa Superstore.
Bawa's where shopping is fun, and you are number one.
Something's happening this October. Urban Woman with me, Razia Rangwich, is turning 4 and we're celebrating in style. Ladies, it's time to dress up, show up, and join us for a live show, a delicious lunch, and of course, cake. Stand a chance to win an air fryer and enjoy plenty of exciting prizes and surprises. Block your calendar, Thursday, 31st October, 10 a.m. to 12 at the Al-Ansar Conference Center. Tickets are 100 Rand available from the Al-Ansar shop. Hurry, only 50 seats available. Book your spot and soak up some positive vibes.
Spend 400 rands or more to win with Checkers Foods, Kawi Park, and Radio Al-Ansar. You could be one of 8 weekly winners of a Philips 6 box and wait for your name to be announced on air. That's it. Checkers Foods Kawi Park, certified by the NIHT, the National Independent Halal Trust, across the butchery, bakery, and deli. Seasons supply.
You've played previously.
Breakfast Rush brain squeeze.
On 4 out of 5. One more correct answer. And you incorrect answer. If you said Henry VIII. Zaka, of course, had yourself an amazing day. How are we going to explain that one? It's back on Breakfast Rush. An informative, smart, global perspective. This is Al-Ansar News.
Making news days are the 16th of October. The news from Durban 90.4 FM, it's Maritzburg 15.6 FM. ANC in KwaZulu-Natal is not backtracking on removal of Kwantiguza Mayor Eric Onina. The ANC in KwaZulu-Natal says it remains steadfast in its decision to remove Kwantiguza Mayor Lindile Ngaka. Ngaka was suspended in September. However, she has refused to resign from office as instructed by the party's provincial leadership. Ngaka took a fight to the media, calling on the agency's top brass to intervene and give her reasons as to why she should not be dismissed. After the May general elections, the ANC KwaZulu-Natal says it had resolved to reconfigure the Kwantiguza Council and make changes so as to strengthen its caucus. Spokesperson Mafiga Ndembele says that the Provincial Working Committee has since decided to suspend class membership because of ill discipline. Ndembele has assured the people of Kwantiguza that the move will not lead to instability or vacancy. Meanwhile, the Chief Councilor in Guza, Privy McCann, says the municipality has a leadership vacuum due to the mayor's suspension and the death of the deputy mayor last year. Moniz, the Beckville man arrested for stabbing 5 of his relatives dead, has been remanded in custody so as to allow for his legal aid application. Lamuli Mondli Koza made a brief appearance in Beckville Magistrate Court facing 5 counts of murder and 2 of attempted murder. Residents and political parties held a demonstration outside the courthouse denouncing crime and calling for the accused not to be granted bail. Koza told the court he wants to apply for bail and does not have any criminal record. However, family members of the deceased want bail denied.
This is very sad. I'm here to cry and say no bail for that man. It's not only them they cry. Even all the others, the neighbors, they are crying about him. Only they cannot step up because the mother is always to cover him.
Moniz, former ANC national spokesperson and NEC member Plemabe, has been granted bail of 30,000 rands after his court appearance on fraud and corruption charges. It's understood that Mabe handed himself over to the police earlier today. Several co-accused, including his wife, have also been given bail of the same amount at the Palm Ridge Magistrate Courts. The case involves a 27 million rands waste picking tender that was awarded to Mabe's company Enviromobi in 2017. Mabe has denied the allegations, is insisting his business delivered the 200 three-wheeler waste picking carts for Ekurhuleni. The court case against them will be back in March 2025. However, Mabe had this to say earlier today.
This which we are today being accused of, by the way, and by the way, I'm not even worried to associate with this innovation. It is my innovation. It is part of my academic studies at the UNISA School of Business Leadership. The very masters that was being read about here in this courtroom. In my thesis, in my research work, I wrote about this innovation. So there's nothing wrong. So maybe South Africans need to start knowing that being accused of crimes does not mean you are guilty. When you are accused, it means there's something you did, which you have to explain. It doesn't mean that you're in the wrong. And what did we do? We innovated. This now gives us a platform to clarify how that innovation works. You have never heard ordinary South Africans complaining that they did not receive the motorized three-wheelers. Here in Ekurhuleni, in Tshwane, and many other parts of Gauteng, there are many waste speakers who have received these motorized three-wheelers.
International story Iranian President Massoud Pezeshkian says increased pressure on the supporters of the Zionist regime can stop its killing machine. In a phone conversation with Oman's Sultan Haitham bin Tariq Al Said today, President Pezeshkian thanked the Muscat for its stance on Israeli violations in Gaza and Lebanon, urging greater unity among Muslim countries. The Iranian president reiterated Tehran's willingness to strengthen bilateral ties with Muscat, noting that relations with Oman are among the Islamic Republic's top priorities and lie within the framework of expanding cooperation with neighboring states. For his part, Sultan bin Tariq hailed Iran's stance on regional issues, including Gaza and Lebanon, and stressed the need for Western countries to avoid double standards in addressing such issues. Your weather, 21 degrees. A quick reminder of our top story. ANC in KwaZulu-Natal says it remains steadfast in its decision to remove the KwaDuguza mayor, Lindile Ngaka. That's the news.
The people of Palestine need your support now. Africa Muslims Agency is on the ground, already providing food, medication, and emergency supplies in Gaza. Donate any amount to Heal Palestine at africamuslimsagency.co.za. Africa Muslims Agency, empowering, educating, inspiring.
This segment is brought to you by Kenfield Auto, your RMI approved service and repair specialist. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Kenfield Auto.
Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. ربنا لا تجعلنا مع القوم الظالمين.
Car won't start?
Kenfield Auto.
Noisy brakes?
Kenfield Auto.
Due for a service?
Kenfield Auto. Kenfield Auto, the answer to all your car problems. Your service and repair specialist for your VW, Audi, Suzuki, Toyota, or just about any vehicle. Kenfield Auto, your RMI and insurance approved workshop to handle them all. 236 Brickfield Road, Overport. Call us on 031 207 2399. Kenfield Auto.
Radio Al Ansar, Durban, 90.4 FM. Peter Maritzburg, 105.6 FM.
Listen to News in Focus on Radio Al Ansar, Durban 90.4 and Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM every Wednesday from 8 p.m. with Yunus Sacoor. That's 8 p.m. every Wednesday. Radio Al Ansar.
وما أرسلناك إلا رحمة للعالمين. We have not sent you, O Muhammad, except as a mercy to the world. اٹھو بے سہارو چلو غم کے مارو خبر یہ سنا حضور آ گئے 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 انوکھا نرالا پوزیشن آیا وہ سارے رسولوں کے سلطان آیا سلطان آیا ارے بادشاہ ہو گلا ہو نگاہیں جھکا ہو حضور آ گئے 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 ہوا چار سور ہے متوں کا بسیرا اجالا اجالا سویرا 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 کلیمہ کو پہنچی خبر آمنہ کی میرے گھر میں آؤ حضور آ گئے ہیں حضور آ گئے.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Welcome back to News in Focus live on Radio Al Ansar International, broadcasting on the frequency Durban 90.4 FM, Peter Maritzburg 105.6 FM, and audio streaming on www.alansar.org.za. Before the news break and the nasheed break, we were chatting with my guests in the studio, including our guest from Cape Town, Willie Aucamp, on 100 days of GNU versus service delivery, activism and identity. And we had a robust discussion. All the participants were very verbose about their opinions. But I'd like to bring Willie back on air. Willie, good evening and back on News in Focus.
Yunus, it's still nice to be with you guys.
Okay. Willie, before the news break, my colleagues were very verbose about the role of civics in local government, but also that is the ground of service delivery. It's the lowest level of service delivery, but a very important area. Now, recently, the state president made a comment that national government has failed local government in that they did not focus sharply in ensuring improvement in service delivery in local government. So Ramaphosa has focused on the weaker municipalities, and eThekwini is one of the municipalities, is the biggest in KZN, but facing challenges, and Section 154 was introduced. Msunduzi in Peter Maritzburg is under administration currently. Mayors have changed in these municipalities on a regular occasion, including Kwaduguza, which is in the North Coast. Now, from a national perspective, Dr. Rama Naidu mentioned, it'll be interesting to check how the local government elections are going to pan out, given the fact that the voters have raised their voices that, listen, we want fundamental changes. And there are clear indicators that there will be a change in trend in local government elections. So, different wards and different organizational structures are preparing for local government elections, including the various political parties. Now, perhaps you want to comment briefly how important from a national perspective is to have local governments working effectively once more.
Yunus, that is of utmost importance. And I think if we see and look at what happened during these elections, the people of South Africa clearly came out to say that they were not satisfied with how things went. And that's not necessarily how things went on a national level. It's people living in municipalities like eThekwini, metros, and in small municipalities like Hassan, where I come from. It's people like that who were fed up for the poor service delivery that they received under the ANC for many years. So the people came out and they said, we need change. I want to come back to what the previous speaker said, and I fully agree with him. I listened to Rama, and what I picked up there is that there's a sentiment change amongst people. I think that there were a lot of people in the past, Yunus, that thought, what does it help? What does it help me to become involved? What will it help me to go and vote? Nothing will change. It's impossible. The ANC will, as former President Zuma said, rule till kingdom come. The point is that people now saw that things can change. People now realize that it is not impossible for a government to be changed. We had a change of government, and that can happen on municipal level as well. And I think people want that. People are fed up for what they received regarding service delivery. It's very important that we've got to show the people on ground level that we want to be accountable and that they must hold us accountable, and they can do that through their votes. We must be in a government, we must be transparent. And if I listen to Abdool, service delivery must be the main priority. The time where parties put their party political interest in front of the people must stop. We must always put the country or the municipality that we come from, the people, must be more important than the party. And I think that is clear if you look at the DA stance with our willingness to work on a national level. But we've got to pull that with the elections coming up, where local people will see that they've got the power in their hands to really make a change to what they feel and see on local government level. To come back to some of the issues that still are being experienced at local government level, even if we take over certain municipalities now with the help of Abdool and Rama and everybody there, and if I say we, let's say an organization, doesn't matter who, you still got the problem that you deal with a lot of cadres that were deployed to those municipalities. And I'm not only talking about eThekwini. I can use Tshwane as an example, where the DA took over Tshwane, but we could not change the administration of Tshwane immediately because you had a lot of people there that you inherited. We need to get rid of corrupt officials. We need to get rid of incompetent officials. The people that are being paid by the municipality, being paid by your and my pockets, must be competent, capable people that are willing to work for the people, not there to serve a party's interest. They must be there to serve service delivery. And another thing, and I want to really commend Rama and Abdool for this, we've got to look at this whole of society approach. It cannot only be a political party, and it cannot only be a civil organization. We've got to take hands. We've got to see how we can cooperate with each other and work together to turn this absolute big mess that we are in, especially at local government level, to turn this around. People must be able to show their willingness to work together and not only go for their own goals, because that is not what the people want. The people on ground level, Yunus, are sick and tired of us fighting. They want service delivery, and that's the only thing that we've got to deliver to them.
Well, Willie, you're 100% correct that you are now talking how a team should work. And, I'm just trying to do an equation with those football supporters in the United Kingdom, when a team performs bad, then they blame the manager, but the players are not delivering. For example, Manchester United being one of the popular clubs, they're buying all the best players in the world, but there's no cohesion, and that's a problem. But Liverpool, on the other hand, are top of the log because they've got a good manager and the players are working together. Now, likewise, in local government, you have this cadre deployment. They basically are there only to fill their pockets. But I want to mention that the Minister of Kokta in KZN, Velenkosini Shlabisha, has vowed to crack the whip on underperforming municipalities. Now, why I'm bringing up his name, because by one vote, the Provincial of National Unity is controlling KZN province, and they're cracking the whip on the municipalities, because very often the municipalities indicate that, our own party controls the province and we're not going to change. He mentioned that we introduced Section 139 of the Constitution now and again. This time around, we need to draw a line, and if the intervention is not working, further dissolve the municipality and ask people to re-elect so that it does not become a tendency that it will take 5 years under intervention, he said. Now, I want to bring in Thabani, Mthethwa, to just explain to our listeners that Section 139, there are three different aspects of 139. The one aspect is basically to bring in an administrator, and the officials must work under an administrator with a team. The other one is to dissolve or to get rid of the councillors, so the councillors become ineffective. So, Thabani, if you could just explain to our listeners, because there's a lot of call for that now that Section 154 and the presidential task team is cause for concern. Now, I want you to just explain to our listeners, why hasn't those two interventions worked in eThekwini? When I interviewed a couple of officials who are involved in those task teams, as well as, Section 154, Mike being a former city manager, indications are that they're more advisory bodies rather than forcing change or implementing change. So, Thabani, maybe you want to comment that why hasn't those two interventions worked? Is it just a diagnostic report and a recommendation, and if the officials don't want to carry out, it's a waste of time? And then why the call for Section 139? Explain the different forms of 139.
Oh, thank you. Maybe before I go straight to what you are raising, may I just respond to one or two things that were raised?
Yes, do so, Thabani.
Just by way of background, when we assumed office in 2021 after local government elections, the DA at eThekwini committed that we are going to be an opposition that is offering solutions. We're not just going to be an opposition just for the sake of it. We kept that promise. Where there were issues that needed to be raised, we raised those issues sharply and made sure that those issues are resolved. But of course, with more than 20 political parties in eThekwini alone, that was always going to be chaotic. But we are committed to making sure that we offer solutions where solutions are needed. And of course, I think Willie has covered this perfectly. There must exist a relationship, a working relationship at local level now, between your civic bodies, your ratepayers association, and us as public representatives. Because in some instances, you find a situation where it's like we are opponents, when in fact, we are supposed to work for one and the same cause, because we are all rooted there at what level, at regional level. So I think we must emphasize the fact that active citizenry is going to be an answer in working with us as politicians to make sure that service delivery is achieved to the people. With regards to service delivery, we must never underestimate the impact of cadre deployment. We are talking about very senior people suspended here in eThekwini. They are sitting at home, earning money while sitting at home. But the reason for that is that there hasn't been consequence management in eThekwini for years now, because you had officials who are supposed to be working in administration, but because they are political connected, they know that whatever they do, they have that political protection, then they do as they wish. That is why some of them are suspended now. I'm not going to mention names because some of them are suspended because of infighting, political infighting, but some are suspended because they needed to be suspended. With regards to Section 154 and the presidential task team, you see, you're quite correct. These interventions as they are now, they are nothing but support and advisory. Advice is something that you can take or not take, which is why we said from the beginning that even though we welcome especially intervention by the province, but we don't believe that this is enough, because at the moment, eThekwini does not need just advice. it needs proper intervention, which is why we said at least you must, through Section 139, have an administrator who's going to, a neutral administrator, not a political employee, because we also have that problem in KZN, that you have administrators who are just political employees of a particular faction within a particular political party. It does show that Section 139 intervention doesn't always work. If you look at Umsondozi, they've been under administration for more than 5 years. Is there an improvement? No. If you look at Mpofana, Umtubatuba, they're about 8, if I'm not mistaken in KZN alone, that are under administration. But is there any improvement? No. Because those are not neutral, hard-working administrators, are political employees of a particular faction of a particular political party. But what we are saying with the GNU in place now, if there has to be an intervention through Section 139, we must get experts, preferably from outside KZN. Because if you have people from outside your province that are not interested in the provincial politics, these are people who are coming to fix the mess that exists in eThekwini. So we are calling for that, and that there must be proper administration in eThekwini to make sure those that are meant to do what they are employed to do are held to account if they don't do what they're employed to do. The different aspect of 139, in the main, there is an aspect where you are just instructed to fix 1, 2, 3. If that doesn't work, then they send an administrator. As I said, we've had municipalities here under administration for more than 5 years. If that doesn't work, then the municipality dissolves and it goes back to fresh elections. Those are the different aspects. Where we are in eThekwini, we do believe that if you don't dissolve, at least there must be an administrator that is going to oversee the affairs of the city.
Rama, I want to bring you in now. Willie mentioned that this cadre deployment is causing huge problems. For example, in Swane, he said that, basically the new mayor came in, he wanted the administration, there were improvements. Now it was realized that a lot of the cadres were set aside or put one side, and then they got rid of him. And he mentioned further that they are basically corrupt, incompetent officials. They're not capable of doing the work. And the former mayor came and did an interview with me, and he admitted that a large amount of his senior staff, and I said this last week, have been coming in the morning, signing the register and disappearing and coming back in the afternoon and signing as though they were present. And as Thabani pointed out earlier, there's no consequent management because a lot of them are cited for corruption and maladministration, and they're still there in the municipalities. So they're protecting each other's backs, and so are the unions. Some will protect their members, Imatu will protect their members, and it's business as usual. Now you need a revamp. Now, in order to implement a revamp, there was talks of administration, but if an administrator comes in and he's the wrong appointment, he's going to use the same officials. I like the concept when I interviewed Dr. Mike Sutcliffe many months ago, when he was elected city manager. And he came in the time of a transition from the old government to the new government, and there were officials that were performing reasonably well. But he was of the opinion, and I'm using this as an example, that he needed transformation in the municipality, and he needed to remove some guys were not delivering effectively, not remove them, set them aside, and bring in a new team of guys that have transformation in mind. And he, from himself downwards to the heads of departments, 40 new appointments he made. And he brought in capable, competent officials, and they changed the whole outlook of the city, transformed the city. And after that phase, when he retired, comes the next city manager who took revenge against what he did, and then the city started to decline. Because I was in that space for a long period of time, and I'm talking firsthand on the decline of service delivery, and we know exactly why, is what Thabani is alluding to and what Willie is talking about. Now, the question I've got for you as an activist, and the people are saying we want change, how will the municipalities, and we'll come back to provincial and local government on another occasion, in the different municipalities going to start revamping, knowing well you've got the unions that are protecting their management, top management and staff interest. And if you bring in new officials, you can't get rid of these guys. There'll be a duplication of expenses. Then this is what they're talking about. How do we go about fixing this? Because in the Western Cape, when the DA took over, They went in there and says, we're putting our officials in Cape Town municipality, you guys park aside, getting rid of them slowly. Because if somebody is incompetent and you have a performance management contract, then they must be measured against that and penalized accordingly. So how would you see municipalities fixing up this major problem? Because if you have incompetent officials, no matter what policies and procedures you have in place, no matter what grouse you get from the ratepayer associations, there's not going to be the required level of service delivery. And I'm going to ask Ernest to come in after you comment.
You have this knack of asking me really difficult questions. This is one of them. Because in the
when you worked in that space, then you know what you're talking about. So go for it, Rama. Give it a try, and I may be able to correct you if you're wrong. But and I know Ernest is keen to really go for broke.
I think the idea in 30 years was understand that a dominant party, their entire aim is to take away everything, and that's what happened, right? From the unions to departments to administration to heads of industries to parastatals, it's total control. And once people are in those positions, ensconced in those positions, then the one is feeding each other. So the thing about protection, and all you need is a thorn in that side, an intervention like we have in the GNU. Once you have this external voice in this space, you can no longer behave like you can do whatever you want in your house, because there's even one voice can record a minority opinion and it goes on record, even in the council. So even one voice can start to make a change. And if we are serious about municipalities, then I think quite rightly, as Willie mentioned, it needs some very strong action, and the action has to come from the ANC, because they started this process, and the only way that it will be cleaned up is if they do the work inside. Every time you try and do it externally, it will meet resistance. It will be defended, you'll be attacked, to getting back to the old. So the ANC is at a crossroads in terms of sorting out their factions and deciding where on earth do they stand, because that's what people are asking for. The other voice that's missing, apart from the notion of the GNU, is the voice of civil society. We're simply not there. And I want to make a plea to the DA, because they're in the room today, that as we talk about this notion about task teams and getting this country back in order, one of their priorities has to be, how do we actively engage civil society and let our people feel like they're being heard? And if we can't do that, it's going to be business as usual again. It only comes up at elections. And that is a responsibility for civil society as well. If we don't get our act together, because we divided, as the political parties are, across all kinds of lines, and decide, are we South African? Is this our home? Are we going to fight for it? If we don't ask those questions critically, then we become part of the problem.
Ernest, you want to come in?
I'm so happy you left on that point, Rama, and I'm going to tell you why. We have 64 million people who stay in this country that we call home. 64 million. Out of the 64 million, if we only have around about 27.6 million people who are registered to vote. All right. If we are serious as people about changing the trajectory of this country, we need to ensure that we go out and voice our discontent. It's very simple. Now, and exactly what you said, I'm happy that we're talking about the roles and responsibilities, because essentially the politicians rely on the voter base. The voter base puts the politicians in. It is a reciprocal effect. However, at the end of the day, you have to be, as a politician, engaging with the people. You cannot ignore them. It's a simple fact. And like I said last week, I speak for myself now, and I'm sure Thabani would agree with me, we are not running away from engagements with the people on the ground. We are not difficult to face the hard questions. But in the same breath, as what we spoke about a little bit earlier, the voters also, and I talk about voters, non-voters, people who are not interested in politics, have to realize that if you do not go out and vote, you are forfeiting your right to have a say in this country. It's as simple as that. It's not me preaching politics and say you must go vote for the DA of this. It's a simple thing. And how many voters to date, all right, potential voters, have I met
who've said, yeah, well, I'm not interested in politics anymore because I don't feel it's going to make a change. Well, guess what? We just had a change, not even 5 months ago. How many people have come out and said, listen, that you'll never get rid of the ANC? They're at 40% odd now. So our responsibility as residents of people in this city, and I'm going to come to the stats quickly, all right? There are 3.9 million people who stay in eThekwini. All right, in 2 years' time, 30% of that current value is 15 years of age. We would have gone up by another couple of 100,000. But the reality of it is we'll have people who are 30% who are 15 years old now who probably haven't heard this, that next best thing. But the reality is those are going to be new people entering the marketplace is what we say. All right, that are going to hear, they stay with their moms, dads, hearing the political things. And the reality is at this point, they are hearing, hey, we actually brought the ANC down. It's actually a little bit over their lifespan because when revolutionary organizations come in, they actually have about 25 odd years, maybe to 30 in some countries. But the reality is, and exactly what Rama said, all right, eThekwini is a powerhouse in KZN. We carry, and I'm looking at eThekwini as a whole, 58% of the GDP of this province. All right, that to quantify that, what is it? 468 billion. All right, and that's not me making the figures up. That's proudly displayed. But the reality is, and going back to that pertinent question you asked me earlier, has service delivery improved? You have incompetent officials, not all of them. I'm going to reiterate this point. It's not everybody across the board. All right. But you have pseudo politicians who are taking decisions based on you, me, and other people and not considering the larger effect of what happens in this metro. And that is exactly why we don't see the roads getting tarred at the moment, because they let a contract lapse. You tell me if this was Cape Town, and I'm so glad Willie mentioned Cape Town, you and knowing the SCM process and the 18-step things that it has to go, you would have an effective government if the person knows, listen, 24 months from now, this contract is going to lapse, or 18 months from now, guess what? For every month that goes by, there must be a step to say, once this contract expires, another one must continue. It's basic logic. But we've got people that exactly what, as Yunus, what you said, over the years, we transitioned and that we needed that. But what we did not need was officials coming in and lining their pockets. It's as simple as that. And now the voters must make the decision where we need to go. And that is why the Section 139 and 154, a lot of people don't know what that is. And voter education, no, scrap that. Resident education is important because when we talk about service level agreements, all right, service level agreements are what we, ratepayers associations, councillors, the like, that's what we hold the municipality to its standard to. That hasn't been a conversation, and it makes officials very uncomfortable because when you start talking, hey, within 24 hours, we should have seen a little bit of action here. People shouldn't be hanging around or not have water and that kind of thing. Electricity repairs, road repairs, that kind of thing. That is the stuff that people that damages people's cars, costs them money. That is the stuff that makes their food go off in the fridge. That's the stuff when we can't bath and we have to go and find somewhere else to go and bath. But I'm a rate-paying resident. They are basically saying, no, we are tired, but something important, and it's something I must emphasize. We have to strike a balance between our politicians, and I mean the politicians that are actually working, not these blokes that that conned us with 10,000 promises about this, that, the next best thing, and saying that we're going to set up our own call center and with money that we don't know when we get from. But has it come to fruition? No. So the voters must also be diligent in the questions they ask, and this is why it ties in to the questions we vote. I mean, why would we have to ask? The reality of it is ratepayers are residents. Ratepayers are people who stay here. Residents, not everyone who's a resident in the municipality is a ratepayer. Let me emphasize that point. But we have to strike a balance between what we have, our infrastructure in place, and those people that we're still trying to develop. And remember, all races are impacted by poverty. It's not a particular group. And I'm emphasizing that point because people will turn around and say, oh, but you're saying this race group or that. It's not. It strikes us all. So having said that, we need to unite as residents and ratepayers of this municipality and say, hold on, the next municipal election, where do we want our government to go? Because Willie is quite correct. It happened and I can use a case in point. We won Mgeni, sorry. We won Mgeni. It was not an overnight approach. Now you've suddenly got every municipal employee that's promising you as a politician. Okay, I'll tie up now. You as a politician, hey, we voted for you. We voted for you. But then your performance comes into effect. As it stands now, I'm not going to pinpoint which official it is, but we have an official from this area who manages a particular facility. They've just been appointed. They don't have an email. They don't have a computer. You tell me, everybody in the room, how do you expect service delivery to happen if we don't fully capacitate our people and we make sure that the necessary KPIs are installed and that we have discipline action enforced? Because comrades can't do that to comrades, unfortunately.
I'm going to throw the spanner in the works. Listening to you guys carefully, and I want Willie to come in shortly, but our finance man is also waiting to chat. If you do a comparison of Ramaphosa's appointments in the GNU, and he went for broke and appointed cabinet ministers from the different parties, some into strategic positions, others into none. The major positions he gave it to the ANC, as you know that aware, because he didn't want his party to be all over him. But he made that bold move to the disillusionment of some of his key party members, and many of his key party members retired also, the late Pravin Gordhan, Naledi Pandor and others, but they took it positively. Now you mentioned that to improve service delivery, you got to do a revamp of the officials, and you mentioned, Ernest, and I want Willie to come in now. Rama mentioned the ratepayers must start talking, and they're not being contacted as in the past, because the ratepayers were linked to the political parties, and when they were elected, they were part of the decision-making process. I know I was there because they were comrades and they held different positions. And Thabani, I want you to come in later, but I want Willie to come in. Willie, how do you go about revamping? Obviously, Ernest hasn't given the answer, but one of the answers to revamping is that if you bring in a whole new political party as a majority in the municipality, at the exco level and council level, they could say these officials are ineffective. Unions, we're parking them one side. We're giving them positions called project executives. It's going to cost a little bit more money, but we're going to wean you out of the system. We're bringing in new guys who can deliver. And I'm sure Cape Town would have done something like that, Willie. Willie, you want to comment? How do we revamp and make sure that officials start performing in the different municipalities, doing it in a way that will take care of all the needs?
Yunus, again, I think it's very important that political parties must put the interest of the residents before the interest of the political party. So, and the moment that you do that, you can also work with your partners. Let's take, for example, the ANC and the unions. If we can get to a point where the ANC could have convinced the unions that certain people are not to the benefit of that council and that they could have get rid of them, it would have been a much better place. But we've got to get to a point where it's not about the political party. It's not about your affiliation. You must be a competent person. Now, that brings you to the problem. And as Ernest said, it is not something that happens overnight. We had to deal with that in Tshwane for many years, and it took some time. In most of those instances, while in certain instances, contracts for 5 years have been signed just before an election. So you're sitting with that person is floating, and he's just doing enough that you might not just get rid of him. But that is not what the people need. The people need people there working for them actively with a passion to really work for their benefit. So we've got to work through these time contracts and make sure that everybody that's reappointed are there for the right reasons. And if somebody did not do his job, not even committed fraud or whatever, if he did not do his job properly, he must not be reappointed. The fact that somebody is a member of a certain party must not play any role whatsoever. We've got to root out cadre deployment. So the answer to your question, Yunus, is that it's going to take time. It will not happen overnight. But we've also got a saying, how do you eat an elephant? Piece by piece. You've got to go on and do the right thing every day. We will get rid of people that are incompetent. It will take time, but we will get there. And the better we produce, let me interrupt myself. There must also be that political will. If you can have a lot of good employees in a municipality or in a government, but if you do not have the political will to really take that government forward, it will not happen. And I think the people of South Africa saw that there is a political will. There's a will to change the past of the corrupt and incompetent cadres that we saw. People are sick and tired thereof. They don't care about from which party they come. They just want to see service delivery. And we've got to take hands. So, yeah, it's going to take some time. But I think if communities stand together and work together, and if political parties put the interest of the people first and not of their parties, we will be able to overcome this problem.
Yeah, I want you to stay in your line. I want to bring in our economist, Hassan Motala. He's a chartered accountant and asset manager. He's been keeping a keen watch on the financial and economic improvements as a result of GNU. And he mentioned there's a midterm budget around the corner. And, finance allocations are very important. Now, I think both you and Ernest mentioned that if you push aside the official, you landed with a 5-year contract cost, and you brought in another competent individual. Now, to improve service delivery, you need the right management officials in position, which our former city manager, Mike Sutcliffe, did. Because he said, rather it cost me 100 million more to have these guys loafing around than losing 500 million in corruption and maladministration. So, Hassan, from a financial perspective, you know that the unions are there to protect the positions and contracts of individuals. Even if they're not performing, there's a process, and it's very difficult to get rid of anybody. So in order to ensure improvement in service delivery, good usage of your finances allocated from national government and the ratepayer and the taxpayer to municipalities, do you believe it's more cost effective to bring in competent people and set aside the other guys so that you start improving service delivery?
100%. I think there's a couple of key issues. Firstly, we're going to, in 2 weeks' time, 30th October, Minister...
You can also comment why Manu is performing so bad also.
I think we'll leave that. That's a more complicated situation. I think if you look at the Minister's midterm budget, I think for the first time in a while, it probably is going to be a little bit more favorable, a little bit more positive than what we've seen in the last number of years. You've seen I think there has been some stability in terms of on the government side, but I think very importantly, there's been more confidence in terms of the economy. You're seeing more and more foreign investors being interested and participating and wanting to invest in the country. You're seeing local investors, local companies wanting to put more into the country. So I think firstly, economic growth is expected or anticipated to be better over next year and the year and the following year as well. Previously, remember in the last 10 years, we've averaged around 1%, excluding just 1 year, which was post-COVID, where you had that basically off a very low base, you had that uptick in terms of economic growth. But throughout the 10-year period, you've had absolutely subpar growth, which was really, really bad in terms of employment and actually in terms of creating a fiscal situation which is tough for the country. Going forward, though, there's a couple of potential positives. If economic growth improves, it means that firstly, our fiscal situation improves because more revenues comes into the country, less reliance on debt. Our debt has ballooned as a country over the last 15 years. 15 years ago, we were sitting close to 30 to 35% debt to GDP. As a country, we're sitting at over 70%. That's enormous. That's a massive increase in a 10 to 15-year period. And that's bad. Why it's bad? Every rand that SARS collects in terms of revenue, 20 cents of that goes towards interest, just towards debt repayment. Imagine if you could just take off that 20 cents, take 10 cents of that and use it towards infrastructure, use it towards healthcare, use it towards education. The benefit for the country is massive. So that's an important point, and hopefully that debt to GDP, if the economy improves, hopefully it stabilizes, and then slowly but surely that debt repayments it can be done. Just go back to 1994. Prior to that, the apartheid government was in a mess, an absolute mess. Remember, F.W. de Klerk and the old NP and all didn't go towards democracy because they were really eager and wanted to do it. Sanctions played a massive part in terms of hurting the country and constraining the economy, and they were forced to do it because of the economic and the fiscal situation that they came into. When Mandela and the appointment of the likes of Manuel and the later Tito Mboweni and the like, with inflation targeting and all that came through during the period of 1994 through to 2008, they turned around the fiscal situation fantastically during that period. We had strong economic growth for a good period of time. We had one of the strongest fiscal positions we've had in a huge amount of time. And I think very importantly, unemployment was around of its lowest levels. Now it's turned around, but don't lose hope. It can turn around with the right people, with the right policies and implementation and execution of them. I come back to now one other key issue, and all the members on this panel have been talking about it, continuously, and we've been speaking about it for a number of weeks. This GNU, one of the key issues or key potential issues in terms of its success that could determine its success over the next 2 years, because I say 2 years because of the municipal elections that will take place, is that the issue around the municipalities. If the municipalities are not fixed over the next 2 years, the GNU will collapse. It is a big issue. And the municipalities, to put into perspective, over 150 municipalities are under administration. I'll give you examples. There's 2 municipalities that have been under administration now for over 4 to 5 years. The Motala district municipality, under administration from January 2021, still in a mess. The other one, Mfuleni municipality, since 2018, still in a mess. How does it take so long under administration? These municipalities are still not even close to showing some improvement or getting to a level. You can't have this continuously going on. You have to have changes in municipalities. And one of the key issues, getting in the right skills. We living here, Ward 21 and Ward 27, I highlight those 2 municipalities, which majority of us are, Ward 31 and Ward 27. We had a breakdown in electricity I think in the weekend, it was Friday or Saturday, I remember. But fortunately, within 5 hours or 6 hours, electricity came back. But across the road from me on Musgrave Road, there was a big block of flats, and there's a few others. For 36 or 40 hours, they still haven't had electricity. Still haven't had. Now you've got water issues that's been happening for quite a few of the places, and still many of them don't have any water. You cannot have this. And these are ratepayers that are paying their taxes, paying it. But why? Again, the infrastructure is poor, not maintained, and secondly, the lack of skills to repair that infrastructure. You put in the right skills, you put in the right skills and the right leadership, it can change. Ernest talked about earlier, Mgeni, the papas and the like. Yes, they've done a fantastic job. But there's other examples where also if you put in the right skills and the right people, they can have good changes and it can be impacted. This issue of the municipalities is the biggest issue, one of the biggest issues, besides the state-owned enterprises. Fortunately, we're seeing some improvement in terms of Eskom, although its debt level still sits at a massive level. And they're trying to implement 30-40% type of increases. Transnet is another example of that as well. And hopefully those things will slowly change. But the municipalities, what has driven actually Eskom to be also to be where they are? Who's the biggest liability or the biggest debtor of Eskom? It's the municipalities. By not paying their bills, they've led to ESCOM going to. That's why now ESCOM is becoming a hard and actually cutting down in terms of services and electricity supply, where municipalities are just not paying anything, and this is gonna continue. Municipalities need to be reformed totally, and I think it's a hard task, because unfortunately politics remains and will still play a part in terms of deployment and cadre deployment, and that happens. But I think you have to take the hard decisions. Hard decisions have to be taken for the betterment of society and for the betterment of all the community, and you have to pursue this. One last point I want to highlight. We're seeing in terms of the economy itself, there's a lot of good signs. Inflation's come down. So the ordinary people and the ordinary person out there went through a very tough period over the last 2-3 years. Remember, inflation for food was like 20%. I mean, what you paid for potatoes and onions 2 years ago, you're paying 50-60% more. What you paid for, milk and eggs and the like, you're paying 30% more. It's hurted the pockets of particularly the most vulnerable. And that's the big. But now slowly we're starting to see some stabilization in terms of inflation. We've had the benefit of transport fuel coming down 20%. Next month, look, there may be a 5 to 15 cents increase in the fuel price. Not significant, considering we had 3-4 rands of a petrol price decrease over the last 4 months. So I don't think it's a major, unless the rand depreciates. But the rand is on a reasonably good foot at the moment, mainly because of the weaker dollar. But the weaker dollar is obviously a bit under pressure because of, firstly, interest rates are being cut in the US, and they potentially could continue to be cut over the next while. I think there's some positive signs. The economy, they're showing offshoots in terms of improving. Investment is coming. Club Med, they just had this week, they had a whole press briefing, and they talked about 2 billion rand investment is coming up in Tinley Manor. Remember Tinley Manor? I remember back in my young days when we used to go, that was one of our favorite places to go for holidays and go for the weekends and the like. Now is a 2 billion rand world-class resort that's coming up in our doorstep. What the potential benefit of that is that international tourists will come here. Club Med is a world-class resort operator, operating in 150 countries. Think of Cancun in Mexico. Think of Mauritius. Think of all these places. Club Med are big operators in these places here. If they set up one good resort here, and they're setting up another game reserve again in Natal, Pongola, they're setting up another game reserve resort up there. Imagine if just that is a world-class and a successful resort. The amount of foreign tourists start to come to KZN. Everybody talks about Cape Town. Cape Town is always the word in terms of foreign tourists. KZN in 5 years' time could be competing with Cape Town as a foreign destination for foreign tourists here. So let us not be despair. I know there's always negativity, and but there is some positivity. But hard decisions have to be taken.
Can I
jump in? 30 seconds.
Before you come in, Ernest, I know we need to wrap up. I just want to acknowledge some of our viewers on Facebook and YouTube that are catching us live. Before Ernest comes in, Willie, we need to wrap up. Willie, your closing comments. Our economist has said that economic activity in KZN is on the increase, and we're going to reach the levels of Cape Town come soon. But the concern is around the municipality. So I just want you to quickly wrap up. You've got about 3 minutes, Willie. It was a pleasure having you on air. We will get you back on air with John Steenhuisen in not too distant future. But, I've got about 10 minutes left to wrap up. So I just want you to wrap up on your side in terms of the comments that were made about that we need to jack up municipalities. Otherwise, 2026, we're going to have problems with GNU. Willie?
Yes, Yunus, I listened to what Hassan said, and I fully agree with him. if you look at what happened with regard to our debt to GDP ratio, currently our debt service cost is the single highest item in our whole budget. It's higher than police, it's higher than education, it's higher than health. And it is due to a dysfunctioning government for many years that we got to that point. We are turning that around. If you look at the bailouts that, for example, were given to Eskom and to all these state-owned enterprises, the DA has long warned that those bailouts will put us in a position where provinces and municipalities will get less and less money. And we saw that with the division of revenue. Every time that there's a bailout, go and look what happened with the division of revenue bill. The municipalities got less, the provinces got less, and we've got to turn this around. And that's where I agree with the maybe careful optimism that Hassan has given us there, is we are at the point where we are taking and turning that around. So hopefully in the future, we will not see cuts to provinces and to municipalities where the grinding work of service delivery is taking place. If we at a national level can make this government of national unity successful, and we are doing that, and it will take time, but we are getting there, it will have a knock-on effect, and provinces will have better finances and obviously better management, and municipalities as well. So it's very important to turn that around. I think my final message, Yunus, is that we've got to stay positive in this country. We are a resilient nation. We have learned over time to stand together. I think we much better respect each other and understand each other's situations now than we did a decade or so ago. We are at that point where we can really embrace us as South Africans and stand together. We've got the same ideals. And I started this conversation tonight with you to say that we've got so much more that we've got in common and that we agree to as South Africans than we've got that's tearing us apart or that we disagree to. If you talk about service delivery, every single person agrees with you on that. If you talk about fighting corruption, every single person agrees with you on that. Everybody wants a clean government. Everybody wants politicians and officials to work for them. And we've got to commit to that. From the Democratic Alliance side, I can promise you that we are committed to that. We want to change South Africa. We want to rescue South Africa, and that rescuing process is on the way. Thanks for having me tonight, Yunus. It really was an honor to speak to you and your listeners.
Really, it was a pleasure having you on air. And when we next have you, I'm sure you'll get John Steenhuisen with us to explore this important subject further. Willie, also do remember that you guys got a long road ahead, another 4 odd years. So keep up the good work and keep our, ministers and MPs, on, timing and ensure that they work effectively. But until we chat again, good evening, Willie, and thanks for joining us.
Thank you very much. And believe you me, we will keep them to account. Thank you, Yunus, and all of the best to you and your listeners.
Thank you, Willie. That was Willie Aucamp. He's the DA MP and spokesperson. Ernest, I want to bring you in for your final comments.
Yeah. So there's just a couple of things I want to add to that, because earlier on I did think about this. Number one, whether we bring in an administrator, and I say good luck to that person as well, because we're dealing with eThekwini or any dysfunctional municipality. You've got to have guts, and you also have to make sure that you've got a solid bodyguards too, because there's obviously issues that we faced in the municipality where people do take each other out. But essentially how we are going to turn this around, all right, is that if we get an administrator in, they need to be strong. They need to be hard as steel. They also have to have a business-like mind. That means business acumen. They must approach eThekwini like running a business. There is no businessman anywhere in the world that operates a business to make a loss. All right. The other point is that they need a strong backbone, especially in implementing disciplinary measures. We spoke about having people here, having these blokes or ladies and gents, whoever it may be, and putting them one side as project executives and the like. Yes, that financially that can be the most sense. But at the end of the day, what needs to happen is that we need to do what is best for the residents. That is simply it. They must not be politically aligned, because the minute that you have got something politically aligned, it creates a problem. You start having a bias. I don't want somebody coming in and saying, hey, you know, my bra, I'm going to give you this. No, we must do it for our people. And at the end of the day, when residents, wherever they may be, need to understand that when they take a vote, and I go back to this point, they need to understand that the ANC in this current climate has 120 odd seats, correct me if I'm wrong, 111? The ANC, no, it's 94 seats now. 94 seats, which they definitely outnumber us. So what we need to do is in this municipality, and the goal would be for the residents, because to share the power, all right? So that no matter who you are, that you can collectively hold each other to account. That's our first step where we need to go to. And that's what I would tell the residents. If you don't, if you don't want to support the ANC, but you also don't want to give the DA majority, that's one part of looking at it. You need to balance the power in here to give political parties the ability to reprimand each other. That's what happens in other parts of the world. And that's what we need to do here. Because at the end of the day, if you don't give political parties the opportunity to be an effective opposition, and at the end of the day, we are going to be putting ourselves in a hole as eThekwini residents. And that's what residents need to understand. When we come around and we say vote for us or vote for whatever, it's not a case of saying we want to dominate you. It's a case of saying, give us enough power to be effective. Give us enough power to bring the change you're talking about. Push these people aside, work them out. Better yet, hold them to their KPIs and their job contracts. As they've got points in there that if your direct manager is not happy with your performance, you can be held under disciplinary measures. That is not happening simply because we've given too much power in the last election to one political party that has members and cadres all over, and they ignore the ratepayers. And when they come and say, listen, Mr. Mayor, we want to meet with you. Okay, how are we effectively balancing the haves and the have-nots? Because they're not balancing that equation. It is simple as that. So at the end of the day, if they don't learn to balance it, that's when at the next poll, we need to go there and say, sorry, ANC, we are taking this away from you because you do not have our interests at hand. You are not, and I'll use my analogy, Yunus, that I used in the last meeting. If you do not create a fertile ground to create economic investment, that your pipe replacement, which is not being done, if you do not create a fertile ground to make an effective crop, you are not going to get anything or have any profit. Instead, you're going to make a loss. So that is how we need to approach it. And that is what I want the listeners to please understand, that we need to go into the elections with the idea that we need to balance everybody out at this point.
Thabani, I want to bring you in to wrap up, but I'm just going to give you some indicators when I was there, how the political parties were working. And the ANC ran to ground, as Rama mentioned, is because the manifestos of the parties were not properly designed to improve service delivery. Because if you look at when democracy crept in and subsequently the ANC won a clear majority in eThekwini, they appointed officials to sort out the imbalances of the past. So the manifesto was clear that go and work in these areas and improve service delivery that hasn't been taking place during the apartheid era. For example, in Chesterville, there was very, very little or no housing. So the mandate was human settlements, go and start constructing houses to respond to the demands of the people out there. In Phoenix, there was rental housing, go out there and go and sort out the problem of ownership there, because that's what the councillors were demanding. Now, the irony of it all is that Chesterville was ANC, Phoenix was predominantly DA, Glenwood was predominantly DA, because John Steenhuisen met me several times when I was there, and he says we got issues there with the flats. Amlazi, predominantly ANC stroke IFP, those councillors were demanding human settlements. Shlanga, Councillor Diboa came in there and he says, listen, why are you bringing Konubia at our doorstep? And we explained to him that there's a shortage of land. Hewletts have land, we got to do different types of housing to respond to the opportunities that people want. It meant that the disadvantaged areas had more service delivery over a 10 or 15-year period, but that was required. Now we're in a situation where, as you rightly said, as Yunus is saying, as Rama is saying, as Willie is saying, these cadre deployments do not represent the ANC. They were greedy employees that came in there like opportunists. They got those positions, they stuck, and they embarrassed the political parties. So your concluding comments is, How are we going to make fundamental changes to ensure that your personnel, Hassan said that also, are sorted out to improve service delivery? Because you're a member of EXCO. I know that the 2026 elections might change the whole outlook of eThekwini. Currently, in the last municipal elections, ANC got about 45% or whatever, and you needed the smaller parties to give them the majority. A lot of those guys are MK boys in the ANC, which obviously there's no by-elections, but that can change 2026. The DA may improve, may not improve, smaller parties may come in and what have you. But currently, Hassan said, if you don't get it right, GNU may fail, Provincial of National Unity may fail. Shlabisa, who's talking now, NFP may switch the other way and he might be out of a position. So how do you see it as an EXCO member to improve eThekwini without going into administration? Because Hassan mentioned administration too is not working. Your concluding comments, Thabani.
Thank you. I think to answer a question about people who might have been opportunists and were able to worm their way into the ANC system and took advantage of that, I think where that system failed was when there was no consequence management against those that were underperforming. It was well and good to make sure that you sort of address the imbalances of the past, but there must be checks and balances to say, whilst you are there for that purpose, but you are also there to serve the people. Correct. I think that's where the system failed. In terms of where to from now, I think even though here in eThekwini, we don't have a formal working arrangement with the ANC, but I think with the government of national unity, the government of provincial unity, you are starting to see some degree of improvement because the environment and the atmosphere, the political atmosphere has changed drastically. One of the panelists here did allude to the fact that when the GNU started, there were notable improvements in service delivery, and that is true. Recall that when the GNU was put in place immediately after that, just before that, the mayor was replaced, and credit to the new mayor because Councilor Rama is a man that consult with other political parties. Of course, we are different political parties. We're always going to have disagreements. But for now, the environment is such that we are able to cooperate with each other in the interest of the people.
You found the impact in EXCO when he chairs the meeting and how he talks. He gives everybody else a confidence, unlike the other mayor that may have just been, guided by his political mandate.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. That has now leveled the playing ground in that as executive committee members, we are not necessarily there now to take a party line. We are there in unison, trying to make sure that we prioritize the interests of the people, because we all appreciate and realize the road and the collapse that is here in eThekwini. That's going to take a united effort to try and resolve some of these issues. But lastly, from me, again, I want to extend an invitation to all of us. Politicians, public representatives are not going to succeed in doing this alone. We need active citizenry. We need ratepayers associations. But I must appeal to those bodies to remain apolitical. Resist the temptation of some of us in political circles to try and put you in our pockets. Because if you align yourselves as civic bodies with political parties, you are then unable to hold all of us accountable, because the first people, even before our own political parties, who must hold us accountable are these civic bodies, the Ratepayers Association. We are accountable to them because they come there on the ground where people are, before we even account to our people. So I'm extending that invitation to say, as a DA in eThekwini, we are more than welcome to work with community structures, because we understand that the task ahead is going to need a united force for us to succeed.
Thank you, Thabani. Some very important comments. Rama, your closing comments. You need to wrap up. After hearing all the comments from various guys, what's your sight in front of the crystal ball?
I think from the word active citizens has come up several times this evening, and that doesn't happen by magic. There's three things that are required. The one is more transparency from the side of government. And citizens have become so cynical of government that the words won't be enough. So we need to see actions, laws promulgated that ensure that this voice is actually there, present, and give us back the confidence that they so badly seek. The second thing is the notion of a scorecard, consequence management, is really simple And there's no one that can argue against it. You measured against a KPA, you perform and don't perform. That's very simple. So that will sort itself out. And the third thing is that citizens also must stop the blame game. Government cannot do everything. We have a country that's one of the most unequal in the world. And that means that even minority groups must begin to understand the big picture of what this is and a slow trajectory. But if we work in partnership with parties for the sake of this country, that is the only way in which we'll start to move forward. Right now, it's still them and us. And that has to be bridged. That's our biggest work as civil society and as political parties.
Accountability, number one word.
All right, Abdool, 2 minutes. You sum up.
Accountability, that's the main work. Yeah. I mean, you took my words, right? So anyhow, the very important thing, exactly what Rama says, is that activism, right? Society, people need to step up to the game. And they cannot just sit back and leave things the way you see it. And, I also want to touch on something very, very important. As much as we respect a lot of political parties that we see, but when I look at these political structures or these political parties on the top end, on the top structure, who are they representing? I mean, I can start ANC on the top 10, black, right? There's no minorities there. There's no people of color. Then if we come to the DA, who are we sitting with? Majority whites, sorry, right? On the top 10, right? So how do we have this equality to be fixed? How are we going to fix it up? Government needs to start rectifying their mistakes, and they need to look at people of color, which represents everybody on the top structure.
Should have said people of merit after that color. Right.
So
Okay.
Exactly. Fit for purpose. That's
Yeah.
right word. So that's the way forward, and this is how we have to look at this change happen. If not, I can tell you now, things will make a difference 2026.
Thank you. I need to sum up in 1 minute or 2 minutes. I think we had a good debate. We had a good conversation. The important issue is to change the way local government works.
Yes.
Because Hassan rightly said, if they don't improve, the GNU gets compromised. And ultimately, ratepayers will start holding back the rates. And Rama is right. They're concerned because we're paying rates for what? So drastic changes have to take place at local government level. Whether administration comes in or not, it hasn't worked. Thabani rightly said so. There's going to have to be brave EXCO members and council members to start taking the bull by the horns and do what Economist did 20 years ago and what other municipalities have done, including Cape Town, that the interests of your ratepayers come first. So we're going to continue with this discussion going forward, and I'll invite more and more politicians because we want people to articulate their views and ensure that our public gets value for money and for what they pay. And must remember, more than 50% of an individual's revenue is going towards different form of taxes, whether it's VAT, whether it's taxes, whether it's rates. And ultimately, there's less money in the individual's pocket to meet necessary expenditure. Yeah. And then the large degree of unemployment, more than 34%, is cause for concern. So Thabani, you've got a lot of homework to do, but we will be on your toes going forward. Just on a closing note, we had a workshop that Rama was talking about with a whole lot of NPOs a couple of months ago, and Gauteng has invited us and they want us to talk on the same issues to give practical solutions to problems rather than just making it a talk shop. So today we spoke very important issues, and I must thank our guest this evening, starting with Willie Aucamp. He was excellent. Ramona couldn't make it, so maybe next week we'll have it. Thabani, it's a pleasure having you in the studio once again. You're holding a very important position in EXCO. Your voice can be heard, and I'm glad to hear that you're a part of a team so that you can improve the performance of the team like Liverpool and not Man U. Right. And then Ernest, you're always a good player, a link man. Ernest reminds me of the number 8 in the soccer team that is all over the place. Abdool, thanks very much for your hard work. You're putting in a lot of effort in ORA, and I know we can see service delivery because we're in this ward, and we must thank you and your persistent efforts with your Ratepayer Association. Rama, you were excellent this evening as usual. You're in demand elsewhere, and I'm sure your degree of expertise in activism will come to fruition in the next elections. Hassan, as usual, excellent economist. Hassan calls a spade a spade. He knows exactly how to ensure the finances are done effectively So I thank you all for joining me this evening. We had a very good discussion. I'm sure our listeners enjoyed our discussion. On a closing note, we all are believers of Almighty God. We believe in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I always tell people, be honest, be good, be respectful, pray to Almighty and ask Almighty for help to guide our people that are involved in positions of trust, whether you're a councillor, whether you're an MP, you're receiving money for the work that you do, and please ensure that you do it for the benefit of the citizens. On that note, we close tonight's, I think there's something that Abdool want to read quickly.
There's some messages there, Yunus. Sorry, I think...
Abdool, you want to just read? Hassan, you want to read those messages quickly? We don't want our listeners who are listening, their messages are not taken into account. So Abdool, will just read the messages and we'll close for this evening. Abdool, if you can read it. Or Hassan, go for it, Hassan.
There was one message from Frank. I think it's salams to all. It was a shock that they came to find the passing of brother Shoaib Musa. Although he never met the brother Shoaib, but on listening to him via Al Ansar this afternoon, where he was interviewed on his efforts during COVID and was taken back with his, the voluntary contributions he made in terms of water, food, baby food, medical essentials, etc., and especially also providing transport to those that need it. Frank says, may the Almighty grant him Jannatul Firdaus.
Just to comment on Shoaib Musa, he was one of the directors of the Willerton Group of Companies. I did a tribute for him at about 5 o'clock this evening. He was buried this morning. And he was a philanthropist. He was a civic activist. He was one of the important contributors of an NPO called Muslim for Humanity. During the COVID pandemic, during the unrest, during the floods, his organization spent millions of rands on relief to serve our people. Because during unrest, there was no manufacturers open, and he sought bread and milk from the factories, supplied it to the NGOs for distribution because no money could buy those services. So hats off to Shoaib Musa, his return to the mercy of Almighty, and we wish his family everything of the best and a high stage in paradise for him. The next message, Hassan?
There's a message. It's from Hassan Mia. He said, Salams, rather great topic, service delivery. Can I share an example of poor service currently experienced as we speak? I don't think she didn't share an example, but he just said, I'm not sure that was, just go further up. See another one there? No, that's it.
Okay, there's no more messages. So listen, our listeners are listening on Facebook or are checking us on Facebook and also on YouTube. I thank them for joining us this evening. We will ensure we continue with these discussions, robust discussions going forward every Wednesday, and we will invite more and more politicians until we get to the solution of the problems. And hopefully before the next municipal elections, we hope and trust that service delivery will be improved with the active participation of ratepayer associations, civic organizations, and others. Until next Wednesday, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.